The bridge of the Sentinel vibrated with the fury of incoming fire as space around them exploded in hostile flashes. Major James Clark anchored himself against the command module, eyes burning with resolve under the red emergency lights. "Give me a damage report and make it quick," Clark snapped, his voice slicing through the din like a shard of glass. "Shields are at a mere 20%, and we're bleeding energy, sir," replied Lieutenant Hargrove, his voice laced with the strain of imminent defeat. Major James Clark's eyes, hardened by battles past, scanned the holographic star maps that floated in the dim glow of the Sentinel's command center. Red blips danced chaotically across the screen, each representing an unauthorized warp signature dangerously close to Earth's mining territories. "Status on those signatures, now," Clark demanded, his tone cutting through the static hum of the bridge. Ensign Talia Reyes, stationed at the communications console, responded with a mixture of urgency and precision. "Signatures confirmed, sir. They're Z'Thar warships, no friendly IDs, and they're closing in on the asteroid belt." Clark leaned in, his jaw set firm, the blue light casting shadows over his weathered face. "Lieutenant Hargrove, how long until our nearest patrol can engage?" Hargrove, a stout man whose calm was often mistaken for detachment, toggled through his data screens. 20 minutes, Major, but that patrol's light won't hold up against a full assault." "Damn it." Clark thumped his fist against the console, the impact resonating around the quiet bridge. He straightened, his mind racing through tactics and trajectories. "We can't sit on our asses waiting for them to make the first move. Plot a course to intercept maximum thrust. I want us in the belt 5 minutes ago." The crew jolted into motion, the sudden burst of activity echoing Clark's own urgency. As Talia dispatched the coded red alert to Earth Command, the Sentinel's engines roared to life, the entire ship vibrating with the force of their departure. Clark strode over to the main viewport, watching the stars stretch into lines as they entered warp speed. His reflection stared back at him, a grim reminder of the weight now placed squarely on his shoulders. "Sir, this could be a feint," Hargrove mentioned, joining Clark at the viewport. "Zerko's been quiet for months." "Why strike now?" "Because he thinks we've gone soft," Clark spat. "Thinks we won't fight back. He's sorely mistaken." He paused, his gaze not leaving the viewport. "Prepare all hands, combat stations. I want every gun ready to spit hell." As the stars reverted to pinpoints and the cold metal of the asteroid belt loomed ahead, Clark felt the familiar itch of adrenaline. This was no mere skirmish. It was a statement, a declaration of Earth's refusal to bow down to interstellar bullies. "Major, we're approaching the belt. Visuals on enemy ships in 3, 2, 1. The screen flickered, then displayed the menacing silhouettes of Z'Thar warships, their hulls bristling with armaments as they maneuvered between the asteroids. "Let's remind these bastards who they're messing with," Clark growled, clenching his fists. "Hargrove, open a channel to the fleet. I'll address the crew." The lieutenant nodded, flipping the switch. A hush fell over the bridge, all eyes on Clark. The Sentinel's hull groaned under the strain as it carved a path through the asteroid belt, each maneuver a testament to Major James Clark's iron will and the pilot's deft hands. The cockpit was a whirl of activity, illuminated by the urgent glow of tactical displays and the stark white of distant asteroids. "Shield integrity's down to 40% and dropping. These rock rats are chewing us up out here," Ensign Talia Reyes reported, her fingers dancing over the controls with frantic precision. Clark stood over the navigation officer, his gaze fixed on the forward screen. "Reroute auxiliary power to the forward shields. Keep us moving, and for God's sake, dodge those larger masses." The ship lurched violently as an asteroid clipped its starboard side, sending a shudder through the deck. Clark grabbed the back of the pilot's chair to steady himself, his other hand clenched in a fist. "Steady, Lieutenant. Give me a sit rep on the Z'Thar positions." Lieutenant Hargrove, always the eye in Clark's storm, adjusted his headset, tuning into the sensor data. "We've got visual on 3 Z'Thar cruisers, coordinates coming up. They're flanked by smaller fighters. Looks like they're using the asteroids for cover, same as us." Clark's eyes narrowed. Time to turn their tactics against them. Load up the torpedoes with proximity fuses. Let's light up this rock show. As the Sentinel's weapon systems whirred to life, Clark tapped the comlink on his wrist, connecting him to the gunnery team. Listen up. We're going live in 3. I want a clean sweep. Fire on my mark. The bridge crew tensed, ready for the onslaught they were about to unleash. Clark watched as the targeting systems locked onto the shadowy figures of the Zha'Thar ships, their sinister forms a stark contrast against the gray of the asteroids. Fire! Clark's command cut through the tension like a knife. Torpedoes streaked across the void, their trails bright against the dark. As they struck, asteroids and enemy shields alike erupted in bursts of light and debris, the impacts echoing through space. Direct hits on the cruiser's aft shields. They're faltering, Talia exclaimed, a mix of relief and excitement in her voice. Clark nodded sharply. All units, advance. Push through their line while they're rattled. Focus fire on their flagship. It's time they felt the bite of Earth's fangs. As the Sentinel bore down on the reeling Zha'Thar fleet, the enemy's return fire became desperate, flak and laser bursts filling the space between them. But the Earth ship, bolstered by its initial success, cut through the chaos with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Suddenly, a larger Zha'Thar destroyer loomed into view, its guns blazing a deadly welcome. Brace for impact, Clark bellowed, just as a salvo of energy blasts rocked a Sentinel. Systems wailed alarms, and Clark felt the sting of perspiration on his brow, not from heat, but from the raw intensity of battle. Damage report now. Shields at 10%. We've taken hits to decks 2 and 3 casualties reported. Hargrove's voice was strained but calm, a port in the storm of war. Amid the debris of shattered asteroids and crippled warships, the Sentinel barreled forward, its cannons blazing a furious barrage at the reeling Zha'Thar fleet. Inside the bridge, Major James Clark surveyed the battlefield, his eyes reflecting the flashes of distant explosions. Status on their flagship? Clark demanded, his voice a sharp crack in the tense atmosphere of the bridge. Lieutenant Hargrove, amidst the chorus of alerts and tactical updates, responded with measured urgency. Significant damage to their propulsion systems, sir. They're drifting, but their main guns are still hot. Clark nodded, processing the information with a tactical mind. Good. Talia, signal the flanking squadrons. Time to squeeze these bastards. No mercy, no let-up. On Talia's console, symbols flickered as she coordinated the attack, her commands dispatching with precision. Flanking orders confirmed. Major. Squadrons are moving in. As the Sentinel continued its relentless assault, the Zha'Thar forces began to show signs of disarray. Their once unified front crumbled under the weight of Earth's coordinated fury, the humans exploiting every gap and weakness with a predator's instinct. Watch R6. Incoming from Quadrant 4, shouted Ensign Juro from navigation, his alert cutting through the cacophony. Clark turned sharply to view the tactical display, his eyes narrowing. Hargrove, deploy countermeasures, swing us around. Let's not get bitten in our own trap. The ship jolted as it maneuvered, evading the incoming fire with a grace that belied its size. Explosions lit up the void, each one a testament to Earth's defiance. Amid the chaos, Clark's comm buzzed with a priority transmission. The voice of Admiral Kingston, Earth Command strategic head, crackled through. Major Clark, your aggressive push is paying off. The Zha'Thar are signaling retreat. Press the advantage. Clark's lips twitched in a grim smile. Acknowledged, Admiral. We'll mop up here. Clark, out. Turning back to his crew, Clark's voice carried the weight of their impending victory. You heard the man. Let's finish this. Drive them back to whatever dark hole they crawled out of. As the final skirmishes played out, the Sentinel and its sister ships tightened the noose. Zha'Thar ships, crippled and defeated, began to warp out, their retreat a disordered scramble for survival. The bridge crew of the Sentinel allowed themselves a brief, collective sigh of relief as the enemy's numbers dwindled. Talia turned to Clark, a trace of exhilaration in her voice. Major, Zha'Thar losses are over 60%. It's a rout. Clark stood, absorbing the magnitude of their success. His gaze lingered on the stars beyond, each light a distant echo of their struggle. Prepare a full damage report and casualty list. Begin salvage operations. I want every usable scrap we can pull from this mess. Major James Clark stood silent at the helm, his gaze locked on the smoldering wreckage of a Z'Thar destroyer, its hull torn open by the Sentinel's relentless assault. The victory was clear, but the cost flickered in the damaged panels and exhausted faces around him. Major, we've got multiple hull breaches on decks 2 and 3. Casualty reports still coming in, reported Lieutenant Hargrove, his voice steady despite the grim news. Clark nodded slowly, the weight of command pressing down on him. Seal off the compromised sections and get medical teams to the injured. Every second counts. As the crew hustled to follow his orders, Clark's comlink beeped a signal from engineering. Sir, reactor stability is shaky. We took a bigger hit than we thought. If we don't pull back now, I can't guarantee she'll hold together. The words hung heavy in the air, but Clark's decision was swift. Understood. Plot a course for the nearest friendly base. We need to regroup. But even as the order left his lips, a new threat loomed. Sensors picked up a fresh wave of enemy fighters, their signatures all too clear against the backdrop of space. Damn it, they're not done with us yet. Looks like these bastards want a second round, Clark muttered under his breath. Hargrove looked over, concern etching his features. Major, we can't withstand another engagement, not with the reactor like this. Clark's jaw tightened, his mind racing through options, each as risky as the last. Prepare to make a stand. Signal all crew to battle stations. We'll give them a fight they won't forget. As the enemy fighters drew closer, the sound of sirens filled the ship, a stark reminder of the impending danger. Clark took a deep breath, his voice calm but resolute as he addressed the crew. This is Major Clark. I know you're tired. I know you're hurt, but we've got one more fight in us. Let's make sure it counts. With the crew rallied and every available weapon charged, the Sentinel braced for the onslaught. The first wave of fighters hit hard, their lasers carving bright arcs through the dimness of space. Each blast against the ship's shields sent a shudder through the hull, a grim dance of death and defiance. In the heart of the battle, with chaos swirling around him, Clark issued his orders with surgical precision. Focus fire on their lead ships. Keep them off our back. We're not going down without a fight. The crew responded with a ferocity born of desperation and courage, their actions a blur of motion as they targeted the advancing foes. For every hit the Sentinel took, its guns answered back double, holding the line against seemingly impossible odds. As the last of the enemy fighters faltered and fled, a tense quiet settled over the bridge. Clark let out a long, slow breath, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. Hargrove, status. Most enemy ships are retreating, Major. But our reactor's critical. We need to dock for repairs immediately. As the battered Sentinel limped toward the sanctuary of Earth's outer defense station, the scars of battle were etched deep into its hull. Major James Clark stood in the observation deck, his eyes tracing the streaks of carbon scoring that marred the metal skin of his ship. Major, we're approaching the station. Docking clearance granted, came the voice of Enzine Reyes, breaking the heavy silence. Thank you, Reyes. Inform the crew to stand down and prepare for repairs, Clark responded, his voice low, carrying the fatigue of the battle they had just endured. The Sentinel eased into the docking bay, the magnetic clamps locking it into place with a thud that resonated through the corridors. As the airlock doors opened, the smell of burnt metal and ozone rushed in, a stark reminder of the close calls they had survived. Clark made his way to the debriefing room, where his senior officers awaited, their faces a mixture of relief and solemnity. He nodded to each as he entered, a silent gesture of respect and gratitude. Major, the preliminary damage report is in, Lieutenant Hargrove began, his eyes briefly flicking to the datapad in his hand. It's not just the hull. We've lost 2 main reactors, and the propulsion system needs a complete overhaul. And casualties? Clark asked, steeling himself for the numbers that would follow. We lost 15, sir. 10 more are critical. Medical is doing what they can. Hargrove's voice was steady, but the loss reflected in his downcast eyes. Clark absorbed the blow, the weight of command never heavier upon his shoulders. See to it that their families are notified personally by me. Arrange for commendations for all. Their bravery won't go unrecognized. As the meeting concluded, Clark remained behind, staring out at the stars. The silence of space was a balm to his weary spirit, but the echoes of battle rang louder in his ears than any explosion. Walking the halls of the Sentinel, Clark visited the wounded, speaking words of encouragement, his presence a comfort to the men and women under his command. In the medbay, he paused by each bed, a solemn figure in the dim light. Later, standing alone under the vast expanse of the station's observation dome, Clark watched the repair crews swarm over the Sentinel, their movements precise and efficient. The ship would be mended, made ready to fight another day, but the people who manned it, their scars ran deeper. Admiral Kingston's voice came through on Clark's communicator. James, you've done well. Earth owes you a debt.